For centuries, the galaxy had followed a simple rule: never enter human space. No official decree had ever been issued. No galactic treaty enforced it. The warning existed only in scattered records, half-erased star charts, and the quiet fear of those who studied the past too closely. Still, the evidence was undeniable. Hundreds of ships from dozens of civilizations had crossed that invisible border. None had ever returned. Curiosity, however, had always been stronger than caution. The Velari were explorers by nature. Their civilization had mapped thousands of systems and catalogued hundreds of species across the spiral arm. Where others saw danger, the Velari saw questions waiting to be answered. And human space was the greatest unanswered question of them all. From every direction, reports had accumulated over centuries. Exploration fleets vanished without distress signals. Long-range probes stopped transmitting the moment they crossed the boundary. Even autonomous drones, machines incapable of fear, simply disappeared. Yet human civilization itself appeared strangely unimpressive. Their technology was solid but not exceptional. Their infrastructure was modest compared to the vast megastructures built by older galactic powers. They had no visible empire stretching across the stars, no massive fleets patrolling trade routes, no clear display of dominance. And still, an entire region of space belonged to them. That contradiction was what convinced the Velari Council to send an expedition. 3 advanced exploration cruisers were assembled for the mission. Each vessel carried cutting-edge sensors, deep space laboratories, and enough defensive capability to survive encounters with most known threats. The fleet was not built for war, but it was far from defenseless. Captain Rethka commanded the expedition. Rethka had spent her career charting unknown systems along the outer frontier. She had navigated nebula storms, encountered unstable stars, and negotiated first contact with species that communicated through electromagnetic pulses. But this mission felt different. Because this time, they were not chasing the unknown. They were chasing a mystery the entire galaxy had quietly agreed to ignore. The moment the fleet approached the boundary of human space, the atmosphere on the bridge shifted. Long-range scanners showed nothing unusual. No defense fleets. No warning buoys. No minefields or automated turrets. Just empty space. If not for the markings on the star maps, there would have been nothing to suggest they were approaching a forbidden region at all. Still, the silence felt wrong. "Crossing the boundary," one of the navigators announced. The stars beyond looked no different than the ones behind them. Yet the moment the ships moved past the invisible line, every sensor operator on the fleet felt the same unease. There were no signals. Not civilian transmissions. Not commercial traffic. Not even background communication chatter that normally filled interstellar space. It was as if the entire region had been deliberately muted. Captain Rethka ordered the fleet to proceed slowly, their scanners sweeping every direction. Minutes passed. Then the first anomaly appeared. A massive debris field drifted several million kilometers ahead. At first it looked like the remains of a destroyed fleet. But as the cruisers moved closer, the scale became clear. The wreckage stretched across thousands of kilometers. And it wasn't from a single battle. Fragments of ships from dozens of civilizations floated in the void. Hull plating bearing markings from empires that had risen and fallen centuries ago. Weapon platforms from species the Velari had only studied in historical archives. Some of the debris was ancient enough that micrometeor impacts had nearly eroded it to dust. But some of it looked disturbingly recent. One of the science officers began analyzing the wreckage patterns. "Captain, these ships weren't destroyed by conventional weapons." Rethka turned toward the display. The hulls weren't burned or punctured the way laser fire would leave them. They weren't shattered the way kinetic impacts would cause. Instead, the metal looked twisted and torn, as if the ships had been ripped apart by forces far beyond their structural limits. Some sections looked like they had been peeled open. Others appeared crushed inward from multiple directions at once. It looked less like a battle, and more like something had pulled the ships apart. Another disturbing detail soon emerged. The debris wasn't scattered randomly. It formed a pattern. A perimeter. Dozens of destroyed fleets had been arranged into an enormous defensive ring stretching across the outer edge of human space. Someone had deliberately positioned them here. As the Valari ships drifted deeper into the graveyard, their sensors detected a faint signal repeating across multiple frequencies. The transmission was weak and heavily degraded, suggesting it had been broadcasting for decades, possibly centuries. The fleet's computers began the slow process of decoding the message. At first, the signal was nothing but static and fragmented data bursts. But piece by piece, the translation algorithms reconstructed the original text. When the message finally resolved, the bridge fell silent. The signal contained only a single repeating statement. Turn back. This region is under human containment. Containment. The word lingered in the air. Containment implied something dangerous. Something confined. Something that could not be allowed to escape. Rethka stared at the surrounding field of destroyed ships. Containment of what? Before anyone could answer, the fleet's long-range sensors detected something enormous drifting ahead. A massive structure slowly emerged from the darkness. At first it looked like a broken planetary ring. But as the ships approached, its scale became overwhelming. The structure stretched thousands of kilometers across space. A ring world. Or what remained of one. Nearly half of the megastructure had been torn away, leaving jagged fragments floating in orbit around a nearby star. The surviving sections were covered in enormous weapon installations, cannons large enough to be seen from millions of kilometers away. Human weapons. Ancient, but still powered. And then the sensors detected movement beyond the shattered ring. Something enormous shifted in the darkness behind the structure. Something that did not match the profile of any known ship. The moment it moved, every warning system on the Valari fleet lit up simultaneously. Whatever existed beyond that broken ring world, it was alive. The Valari fleet advanced carefully through the debris field, their cruisers moving at a fraction of normal exploration speed. Every sensor array was active, scanning the surrounding void in layered sweeps. What initially looked like a simple wreckage zone quickly revealed itself to be something far larger. This wasn't one destroyed fleet. It was dozens. Fragments of vessels from civilizations scattered across the galaxy drifted in silent orbit around the border of human space. Some ships were massive military carriers designed for planetary assaults. Others were delicate exploration craft built for scientific missions. Trade vessels, diplomatic cruisers, automated probes, every type of ship imaginable was represented here. None had survived. And the deeper the Valari scanned the graveyard, the stranger the pattern became. These ships hadn't been destroyed in one catastrophic event. Their wreckage existed at different stages of decay. Some hulls were scarred by centuries of micrometeor erosion. Others looked as though they had been torn apart only months earlier. This wasn't a battlefield. It was a warning that had been building for generations. The science teams began mapping the debris distribution. As more data flowed in, a clear structure emerged. The destroyed fleets formed overlapping defensive rings stretching across the edge of the region. Someone had turned the remains of these ships into a barrier. A containment line. Captain Rethka studied the growing map in silence. The pattern was unmistakable. Every destroyed fleet sat directly along the boundary between human space and the rest of the galaxy. None of the wreckage drifted deeper inside. Whatever had destroyed these ships had done so at the border, and nowhere else. A drone was deployed to examine one of the closer wrecks. The ship belonged to a species known as the Korthali, a once powerful empire that had vanished from galactic records nearly 4 centuries ago. Their vessel had been a heavily armored war cruiser capable of surviving prolonged combat. The drone transmitted detailed scans of the hull. The damage made no sense. Sections of reinforced armor had been peeled away as though they were thin fabric. Massive structural beams were twisted into impossible shapes. Entire compartments were missing, leaving empty cavities where interior sections should have been. The patterns didn't resemble weapon impacts. They resembled feeding damage. Then the drone's sensors detected something drifting nearby. At first it appeared to be debris. But its surface moved. Slowly. The object was enormous, stretching several hundred meters in length. Its texture was neither metallic nor crystalline. Instead, it resembled dense organic material, layered in thick folds of dark tissue. The drones circled closer. No bones. No organs. Just endless layers of alien biological structure that seemed to regenerate slowly even in the vacuum of space. The science officers began running rapid scans. They found no genetic patterns matching any known life form, and no signs the creature had ever belonged to a natural ecosystem. Before further analysis could continue, the drone's feed suddenly distorted. The camera view twisted violently as something moved inside the drifting mass. A ripple passed beneath the surface of the tissue. Then the transmission cut out completely. The drone had vanished. Silence returned to the fleet. Moments later, another discovery appeared. One of the sensor technicians had located a partially intact alien warship buried within the debris field. Unlike the other wrecks, this vessel still possessed an operational power core and a functioning data storage unit. A recovery drone carefully retrieved the core and transmitted its contents back to the Valari fleet. The files were ancient. Their timestamps dated back more than 200 years. The logs belonged to a species called the Theral Dominion, a technologically advanced civilization that had disappeared from the galactic stage long ago. Historians had always assumed the Theral collapsed due to internal conflict. But the final log entry told a different story. The recording began with frantic background alarms and distorted communications. A Theral commander appeared on the screen, his voice filled with exhaustion and disbelief. "We believed the humans were territorial." He paused, glancing towards something off-screen. "We believed they destroyed the ships that entered their territory because they feared invasion." Another explosion echoed in the background. The commander shook his head slowly. "We were wrong." The recording flickered with interference. "They weren't defending themselves." A moment of silence passed before he spoke again. "They were protecting everyone else." The video feed degraded further as the final transmission began. "If you are receiving this message, then you have already crossed the border." His expression hardened. "Turn back immediately." The last line appeared in the log as static consumed the recording. "If you stay, they will find you too." Before the Valari crew could process the message, every sensor station across the fleet erupted with alarms. Space itself began to distort several thousand kilometers ahead of them. Gravitational readings spiked wildly. The stars beyond the distortion stretched and twisted as if reality itself had become unstable. Then the void opened. Something massive began forcing its way into normal space. At first it appeared as a shifting storm of dark matter and moving shadows. But as the shape expanded, details emerged that defied all logic. Fragments of teeth. Layers of writhing mass. Endless tendrils that seemed to phase in and out of existence. The creature had no stable form. Parts of its body existed for only seconds before dissolving into new shapes. And it was enormous. Large enough that its presence alone bent nearby gravity fields. The Valari fleet had encountered dangerous organisms before: space leviathans, stellar parasites, even creatures that lived within nebula clouds. But nothing like this. This thing didn't behave like life. It behaved like a tear in reality. As the entity pushed further into space, its shifting mass brushed against the drifting wreckage around it. Entire sections of destroyed ships vanished the moment they touched the creature's surface. Consumed. Erased. The Valari fleet's computers attempted to classify the object. Every system returned the same result. Unknown. Unnatural. Impossible. Then something else happened. Across the entire system, thousands of hidden signals suddenly activated. Weapons platforms buried in the darkness began powering up. Ancient defense systems that had been dormant for decades came online simultaneously. Human defense systems. And every one of them was targeting the creature. Before the Valari fleet could react, a wave of encrypted transmissions spread across the system. Signals appeared from directions their scanners had previously marked as empty space. One by one, new contacts emerged on the tactical displays. Human warships. Hundreds of them. They decloaked in perfect formation, surrounding the distortion where the creature was forcing its way into reality. Their designs were unlike the elegant vessels favored by most galactic civilizations. Human ships were blunt, angular, and heavily reinforced, built with one clear purpose: war. Massive armored hulls carried weapon systems larger than some exploration ships. Layers of shielding generators pulsed along their frames. Each vessel moved with disciplined precision, taking position without hesitation. Within seconds, the empty void had transformed into a battlefield. A calm signal broke through the Velari communications network. The transmission was simple and direct. "Unknown fleet, you have crossed into a human containment zone." The voice speaking was steady, controlled. "Maintain distance. Do not interfere." Captain Rethka watched the growing human formation with disbelief. None of these ships had appeared on long-range scans earlier. They had been hiding here the entire time. Waiting. The human voice spoke again. "We will handle this." Then the battle began. The human fleet fired first. Beams of concentrated gravitational energy erupted from several warships, striking the creature as it continued emerging from the distortion in space. The attacks didn't behave like normal weapons. Instead of burning through the target, they bent the surrounding gravity fields, pinning sections of the creature's mass in place. Additional ships launched volleys of missiles that distorted space as they traveled. Each detonation collapsed a small region of reality around the creature, forcing fragments of its shifting body back toward the dimensional breach it had emerged from. The creature responded instantly. Its form expanded, tendrils of unstable matter lashing outward across the battlefield. One human destroyer was caught directly in the path of the attack. The ship vanished the moment the creature touched it, as if the vessel had been erased from existence. Another human cruiser attempted to intercept the creature's movement. The enormous ship unleashed a continuous beam of stellar plasma directly into the shifting mass. The attack slowed the entity. But it did not stop it. Sections of the creature simply absorbed the energy and continued expanding. Its shape shifted constantly, growing new appendages while older ones dissolved into clouds of unstable particles. The Velari had never seen a battle fought like this. Human ships maneuvered with ruthless efficiency, sacrificing position and sometimes entire vessels to guide the creature's movements into carefully calculated firing zones. They did not panic when ships were lost. They adapted. Every strike they launched had a purpose. It became clear this was not humanity's first encounter with the entity. They knew exactly how it fought. One group of human ships formed a containment perimeter, creating a field of overlapping gravitational distortions that prevented the creature from spreading further into the system. Another group continued attacking the dimensional breach behind it, attempting to collapse the opening before more of the entity could emerge. The Velari fleet could only watch. Against something like this, their exploration cruisers were meaningless. During the chaos of the battle, a new transmission appeared on Captain Rethka's command console. This one was directed specifically at her ship. The same human voice spoke again. "You shouldn't be here." Rethka answered immediately. "What is that thing?" For several seconds the human commander did not respond. In the background, the sounds of battle filled the channel: status reports, weapon confirmations, damage assessments. Finally, the human spoke again. "It's one of them." The answer explained nothing. Rethka pressed further. "Why destroy every ship that enters your territory?" Another human vessel disappeared as the creature's shifting mass engulfed it. Still the commander's voice remained calm. "Because if even one of those things escapes this region, your civilization dies." The statement carried no threat. Only certainty. The human continued speaking. "Centuries ago our deep space probes detected signals from outside our universe. At first we believed they were natural anomalies." Another wave of weapons fire struck the creature, forcing it to recoil toward the collapsing dimensional breach. But the signals kept growing stronger. The human fleet tightened their formation, continuing to guide the entity away from the outer systems. "Eventually we discovered the truth." The commander paused briefly. "These things aren't native to our reality. They exist in higher dimensional space and hunt energy-rich star systems. Rethka stared at the creature twisting through the battlefield. Hunt civilizations? Yes. The human voice grew quieter. They consume everything. Worlds. Stars. Entire species. The Valari captain felt a cold realization forming. And the destroyed fleets along your border. Containment measures. The human fleet launched another coordinated strike, collapsing more of the dimensional opening behind the creature. Every ship that enters this region risks attracting them. The creature lashed outward again, attempting to escape the gravitational traps surrounding it. That's why we destroyed them. The words came without hesitation. If those things follow a ship back into open space, they spread. Another human cruiser detonated as it rammed directly into the creature's expanding mass, triggering a gravitational collapse that forced the entity backward toward the breach. For 800 years we've kept them contained here. The distortion in space began shrinking. The creature fought violently as the dimensional opening behind it started to collapse. We fight them where the galaxy can't see. The human commander's final words carried the weight of centuries. So no one else has to. The dimensional breach finally began collapsing under the sustained assault of the human fleet. Gravitational weapons tightened their hold while coordinated missile strikes forced the creature backward toward the shrinking tear in space. Every movement of the entity became slower, its unstable body struggling against forces specifically designed to trap it. Human ships closed in without hesitation. Several vessels deliberately moved into the creature's path, releasing containment charges that detonated with bursts of warped gravity. Each explosion compressed sections of the entity, forcing more of its mass back toward the collapsing rift. The creature fought violently. Tendrils of shifting matter lashed outward across the battlefield. One strike caught a human carrier, tearing through its armored hull as if the metal were vapor. The ship disappeared inside the creature's unstable mass, its signals vanishing instantly. The rest of the fleet didn't falter. They continued pressing forward with calm, calculated movements. Every attack drove the creature closer to the closing breach. Then, with a final wave of coordinated fire, the distortion in space snapped shut. For a moment the system became silent. The creature's remaining fragments twisted violently as the dimensional tear sealed itself completely. Without the breach sustaining its presence, the entity began collapsing inward. Sections of its impossible body dissolved into drifting clouds of unstable particles before fading entirely. Within seconds, nothing remained. Only the wreckage of the battle. The Valari fleet drifted quietly beyond the combat zone, their crews staring at the aftermath unfolding before them. Human warships moved slowly through the debris field, scanning for survivors and recovering damaged vessels that had managed to escape destruction. But many ships were gone. Dozens of them. Captain Rethka studied the tactical display, watching as the human fleet reorganized itself around the region where the breach had existed. Automated defense platforms resumed their silent positions throughout the system. The line had been restored. Only now did she fully understand what the border truly represented. It wasn't territory. It was a shield. A barrier holding back something far worse than war. The human commander opened a channel again. His voice sounded the same as before, calm, steady, almost routine. The threat has been contained. Rethka looked again at the drifting wreckage of destroyed human ships. How long have you been doing this? There was no hesitation in the answer. 812 years. The number settled heavily over the Valari crew. 8 centuries of battles hidden in the dark between stars. 8 centuries of ships sacrificed to stop creatures the rest of the galaxy didn't even know existed. Rethka spoke again. The graveyards we passed, the destroyed fleets along your border. Those were incursions, the human commander replied. Some were accidents. Others ignored the warnings. And you destroyed them? Yes. The answer carried no apology. We couldn't risk those things following them back into open space. Rethka finally understood the purpose of the repeating message they had intercepted. Turn back. This region is under human containment. The warning hadn't been a threat. It had been mercy. The human commander continued speaking. Most civilizations never discover this war. They live their lives believing the galaxy is safe. He paused briefly. That illusion exists because we keep fighting. Across the Valari fleet, the weight of that statement settled over every crew member listening to the transmission. Entire civilizations had lived peacefully for centuries. Not because the universe was safe, but because someone had chosen to stand in the darkness and hold the line. Rethka looked again at the damaged human ships still drifting through the battlefield. These vessels had been built for one purpose: to fight an enemy that could erase entire species. And they had done it alone. The human commander's voice returned once more. You entered our territory. That means you now know what exists beyond that border. A moment of silence passed. Which means you have a choice. Rethka waited. You can turn your fleet around right now. Leave this region. Forget everything you saw. His tone remained calm. Return to your people and live safely in the galaxy we've protected. The offer hung in the silence. Then he spoke again. Or you can stay. Several human ships repositioned themselves near the location where the breach had existed, already preparing defenses in case another anomaly appeared. You can learn what we know. The commander's voice hardened slightly. And help us fight. The Valari bridge remained quiet. Every officer understood the meaning of the decision being offered. Leaving meant safety. Returning to their civilization meant living in a peaceful galaxy where this war remained invisible. But staying meant something else. It meant standing beside the species that had carried the burden alone for centuries. Rethka studied the battlefield one final time. Human ships were already repairing defenses, replacing lost platforms, preparing for the next incursion that would eventually come. Because something like that creature would return. It always did. The galaxy simply never saw it happen. Rethka opened the communication channel again. Her answer was direct. Transmit your tactical data. The human commander did not respond immediately. For several seconds the channel remained silent. Then a new signal appeared across every Valari ship. Star charts. Defense coordinates. Containment protocols. Battle formations designed specifically for fighting the creatures beyond reality. At the center of the transmission was a single line of text. Welcome to the front line.